The college football playoff reveal is out. We have some comments and thoughts about that. Also, an interview with Oregon State's president shed some light on what the Pac-12 might do next. And we'll talk about the big games of the week. I'm John Canzano. You can read me at johncanzano.com. He's Jon Wilner. Find him at wilnerhotline.com. Wilner, how did the playoff reveal go for you?
You're good at those intros. You should try radio.
Thank you. Setting up the show.
Yes.
And you know what I hate more than anything? When you watch a broadcast or you listen to a broadcast, when they take too long to get into it.
Yes.
Too much wind up.
Too much wind up.
I'm much more about let's dive right into it. Let's spend 30 seconds maximum talking about what we're going to talk about. Right. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Then we start talking about what we're supposed to talk about. Let's just talk about it.
Let's just talk.
To that point, I watched the playoff reveal rankings, the ranking reveal last night. I watched it with the sound muted on the TV.
Did you?
It was enjoyable. It kind of was enjoyable to not hear the chirping and the pandering and the, I just watched the rankings come out and I went, kind of more enjoyable that way.
I didn't watch the rankings partly because I had my weekly radio hit on KJR Seattle, but also because I have YouTube TV. And so right now I don't have ESPN. Ooh.
Oh, wow.
It was interesting over the weekend because I thought, should I go to a backup plan? And most of the games that were of high interest to me were not on Disney this weekend, just the way it broke. So I thought to myself, you know what, let's just wait and see if they get a deal before the Cowboys are on Monday Night Football. Obviously no deal. So this weekend I'm going to be kind of biting the bullet and finding a backup option here with the Disney blackout continuing. But I certainly caught up on everything. Read the transcript from Mac Rhodes, the selection committee chair, and his media session. Looked at all the analytics as much as you could see. And sure, I've got some issues with it. But on the whole, I actually thought it was pretty good. Compared to last year, it was really good. I don't know that the changes they made to the process that the SEC was pushing are necessarily the reason that it seemed like a better order of teams, but I didn't have as many gripes as I usually do with the first ranking.
Look, and I think the biggest takeaway from me is I am hearing griping about the selection committee, and the work isn't done, right? Yeah. This is the first glimpse. And I keep feeling they've asked us to evaluate the restaurant, and we're all walking in and we look at the table and how it's set, and we're like, oh, this place sucks, or this place is great. Let's sit down and let's eat, let's eat the food before we start judging the chef and the cook. And let's see how this plays out, because part of it is that the committee has set some things up here. You've got BYU at 7, Texas Tech at 8. That sorts itself out. You've got Georgia and Alabama both playing opponents in the next few weeks that are also near the top 12. And so there's going to be some sorting out at the top that I think is really going to help it all make sense in the end. I like the overall feel that, they placed an emphasis on strength of schedule. You could feel that when it came to Oregon in particular.
Yes.
James Franklin got fired. Nobody in Happy Valley is happy. But the Ducks probably got hit as much as anybody for Penn State not being very good, And so, but let's let this play out a little bit. Let's give it some room to breathe.
Yeah, I'm with you. And as long as they don't box themselves in, which they did last year, they've got a chance to get it right. I do think, kind of piggybacking on your restaurant analogy there, I think that the chef is part of the problem. Okay. And there is a distinct trend, in my opinion, in college sports here with these selection committees. If you think back to last year, the Big Ten, relative to the SEC and relative to some of the resumes, Big Ten teams on a weekly basis were very well ranked by the committee. Who was the committee chair? Ward Manuel, Michigan's athletic director. Then we moved to the spring in the NCAA tournament. And what's the most controversial pick? North Carolina getting in. Who's the committee chair? Oh, it's Bubba Cunningham, the North Carolina AD, who, by the way, got a bonus for Carolina getting in the tournament. And now here we are. And man, the Big 12 sure did well last night, right? BYU and Texas Tech 7-8. Utah at 13 was a big surprise. Not saying the Utes don't deserve it, but it was a surprise, and the committee kind of leaned into the metrics. Meanwhile, the ACC got snubbed, and we could get into some of that if you want. But certainly the Big 12 did very well relative to expectations last night. And who is the committee chair? Mack Rhoades, athletic director at Baylor.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion, and I'm not picking on any of those guys, that it's only natural to have a group of people who spend all that time together. You're going to be swayed by relationships. And if you're friends with the chair, you know what? You're going to be subconsciously perhaps influenced. And I think we have seen a distinct trend and need to change the process. And the chair of these committees cannot be a sitting athletic director. They have got to stop it in football and in men's basketball.
And I think, you hear like the chairs will tell you, Rob Mullins, the former chair, he'll say, look, when it comes time to talk about teams in their conference or their own team, they have to leave the room, and then a light goes on. They come back into the room from a basketball selection committee. It's very similar, but I still think that the error of it exists when you walk back into the room. I would say too, I'd like to get the ADs in general out of that room. Like, I love the athletic directors, but this isn't their job. This isn't part of their job. Get the ADs out of the room. I'd rather see 12 former coaches making these selections. Let the coaches, because so much of what came out of last night too kept hearing about how these teams look.
Yeah.
And it was sort of there was a visual undertone about the assessment of these teams that, nobody said eyeball test, but it kind of was an eyeball test thing a little bit. And that came out over and over. But if we're going to eyeball these teams, I'd rather have coaches who have actually coached games eyeball the teams, not the ADs.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And we should get into, because you wrote something about Mike Riley.
Yeah.
So we could get into a little bit of that if you want. But the coaches have a different view. And I think that this was clear last year too. They view any game, if you win, it's a win. It doesn't matter who you're playing. And so there's a tendency with the coaches, I think, to just focus in on the one-loss record as the best judge of the team quality and not take into account strength of schedule as much. Now, I know the SEC pushed for changes to that, and now they do have the strength of record piece as part of the data they look at. But, the coaches have a different view, and that may not be the wrong view, but it is certainly different. And some years I think we see that the coaches carry more weight than other years, and it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. What did you learn from Riley, who's on the selection committee, about how he's viewing the whole thing?
Well, the whole thing with Mike Riley is that, his wife, Dee, was in a memory care facility. She was fading. She passed away just a year ago. And Bill Hancock, who was the chair of the CFP at the time, calls up Mike Riley and says, hey, Pat Chun has just left Washington State. He's going to Washington. They're pulling him off the committee. They wanted to ask Mike Riley. And I reached out to Bill Hancock yesterday and I said, hey, did you put Riley on that committee kind of as was that a humanity move? Like, because, he needs something to focus on. He's not coaching anymore. His wife just passed. Dee was just such a great lady. And she was always there at the back of the news conferences. And I just kind of wondered, was there a little bit of and he said, absolutely. Like, he said that they thought, it would not just be, valuable to have somebody from the western part of the United States on the committee, but also that they knew Mike Riley probably needed this. Right. And so, but Riley told me when I talked to him, when he was just first appointed, he said, look, it's going to be great. He watches games anyway. Like, he watches all these games. He's in it. He's not that far removed from coaching. He was still coaching, fringe professional football when they called him, more or less. So he feels like he's in it. He feels like he knows the conferences. He coached at Nebraska. He coached at Oregon State, coached in the NFL. I think he's a sneaky good addition to this committee because I think he's going to view it objectively. And plus, he's so fair. Yeah. You dealt with him. He's a very authentic, fair person. I don't think Mike Riley would go into that room with an agenda at all. And so I think he's a really good voice to have in that room.
They certainly did a pretty good job. I think that, if you're Miami, you got a case. Why are you 8 spots behind Notre Dame when you beat Notre Dame head to head and they have the same number of losses? If you're the ACC, you're probably wondering, what did we do? Why is Miami 18th? Why is Virginia, our highest ranked team, 14th, which is behind the highest ranked ACC team is behind 3 Big 12 teams. Big 12 did very well. I'll get back to, again, who's the committee chair. The SEC and Big 10, they combined for 16 out of the 25 spots. I think that was pretty apparent that was going to happen. The other one is just Notre Dame, right? And we've talked about this, but the fact is Notre Dame is 10th. If there was a playoff today, they would be in. And if they keep winning, they're clearly going to be in. They're not dropping out if they keep winning. And Notre Dame, if they make it, they take one of those 7 at-large spots. So that is a big deal. Everybody's in all the conferences needs to be rooting against Notre Dame.
I don't think Virginia's that good. And that's the other thing. Like, Virginia's best win is what? Louisville? Like they beat Louisville?
Yeah.
That's it. But the ACC's got a problem because I think a lot of eggs were in that Miami basket, and then Mario Cristobal can't manage a game. And so you end up in a really bad situation because, Miami's probably their best team. And to the Notre Dame point, it's kind of what you signed on for when you went to a 12-team playoff.
Yes.
They lost back-to-back games, and then they've reeled off 7 straight wins. And so, who's playing the best football right now has to matter to that committee, and Notre Dame's playing better football than Miami.
Well, that was clear that they are judging. They are very subjective. Was the vibe I got from reading Mac Rhodes' comments is that this is, at least this week, was a very subjective assessment. There was a lot of references to how teams are playing, how good they look.
How good they look
not as
coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, not as much about, the metrics. And we'll see if that sticks through the next 4 weeks or not. But it was quite revealing.
I want to pivot a little bit here. I did an interview with Oregon State president.
Yes.
Yeah. Jayathi Murthy, who talked about a whole bunch of things. That interview, I'll link to it here in the comment section, but she had a lot to say, not just about, AI and NVIDIA and the possibility of implementing AI and making Oregon State the AI school when it comes to athletics, but she talked about the Pac-12. Yeah. And I want to play a little clip here because it was interesting. I asked her kind of where her mind is as she is evaluating and other presidents are evaluating additional members of the Pac-12, right? They're at 9 members, 8 football members.
Well, I think it's really important for us to finish the thing that we started doing. All right, so we've got our schools in place. We've met the NCAA requirements. So that's a huge relief. The building up of the Pac-12 to address the needs of the entire set of schools we now have is not a small task. So if you talk to Teresa, she'll tell you, the staffing went from 150 to 30 or something, and now we got to build it back up to service all of these schools. And then, and Teresa and all of us are determined that we be creative, all right? We are going to be the top 5 conferences. And what that means is that we've got to have the resources to do that. And resources mean not only media rights, but all of these new business opportunities that we're all looking at, Pac-12 enterprises, and so on. And it's going to basically take this year to do that. It's not easy to do. Yeah. And so expansion's always on our mind. We're always looking for like-minded partners. But we've got to finish the meal that we've bitten off.
That's Jayathi Murthy, the president at Oregon State. Wilner, what do you hear there?
Well, anytime we can get a president on the record about the realignment, expansion stuff, I think is good for everyone. I hear that they want to be creative, right? And they feel like they have a blank slate in a lot of ways, and they can do some things that maybe other conferences can't do because you're kind of tied into tradition and to policies that have been in place for a long time. But I don't get the sense that they're ready to add another member. Do you?
No. And in fact, she talked later, and again, I'll put the link to it in the notes and in the comment section, but to the full interview. But she talked about, sort of being relieved at the idea that they got to the NCAA threshold, and now they're kind of digesting. You heard her say, "Got to finish this bite." They're digesting what they've just done. What did that feel like when you got to the NCAA threshold?
Sheer relief. Actually incredulity and relief, because who thought this was possible, right? I mean, when we first started thinking about it, it felt like a strange thing to be taking on and an impossible thing to be taking on, but it worked. And we pulled it off. And so we are safe now, and now we can think about creative ways forward.
They have multiple paths here for football scheduling for 26. I don't think we're going to see a football schedule from the Pac-12 until maybe February or maybe even early March. I think they're going to be really slow about how they roll out the schedule because they don't quite know, like, how are they going to play? How are they going to get eight games, the extra game with 7 conference games? They only have 8 members. Do they play head to head? Do they do a partnership with another conference? Or does the Mountain West thing scare everybody away from a partnership? Or do they add a non-conference game, everybody for their own? I kind of think that home and home thing is going to be maybe on the table a little bit here as a possible option. But I agree with you. I think they're going to digest here and wait and see what happens with litigation with the Mountain West. And, they're not eager to make a bad move. They're not eager to make a desperate move. They're not desperate in this position.
I talked to Merton Hanks, the chief of football operations. It was about a month ago now, 5 weeks. He told me that he gave me the same sense. They are, they're not, they want to get it done quickly, but they're going to take their time. He told me they have gone through 120 iterations of the potential schedule for next year, which kind of gives you a sense. And they're playing 7-dimensional chess because, the SEC going to 9 conference games has a cascading impact on everybody else. And the mandate that the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 all have to play not only 9 conference games, but then 1 non-conference Power 4 opponent. That sucks up opportunity for the sub Power 4 conferences. They've got a lot. The playoff situation is impacting them. You're trying to, handle all these different scenarios, and it's very tough. And they want to get it right because the schedule is going to be so important to their playoff prospects. They've got to thread the needle. Good strength of schedule, but they don't want to just overload their best teams and make it too difficult to get there. It's really as much art as it is science, I think.
One of the options on the table, I'm told, is a home and home series with an opponent just for 1 year in 2026. This would not be what they think about long term. But one of the concerns with that is, let's say Boise State and San Diego State are playing each other in a home and home, hypothetically. All right. Let's say they're the best 2 teams in the conference and they split. And then they end up in a third game for the conference championship game. Like, it doesn't really work a third time. And so what I've been told is that one of the options is that, everybody plays we play a 7 games conference schedule. And then there's a week in mid-November that 4 teams know they have a home game, 4 teams know they have a road game, and you don't decide who's playing in those games maybe until, 2 or 3 weeks before it, which would give the conference an opportunity to work maybe a little with their TV partners, strategize about strength of schedule, what's the right combination, who should be playing who. There's a little bit, like you say, art and science. Like, I think it could come down to something like that.
Yeah. Well, a flex weekend is essentially what they're talking about for all the 8 schools. There's no way, I've been told there's no way they would have teams meet for a third time in the championship game. They would find a way, they'd bake something into the process to avoid that. But I do think that a flex weekend would have some appeal to their media partners and would, again, allow them to position their best team or teams for the CFP. If the CFP, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be 24, right? Now that Fox has weighed in and said bigger is better, that's a a sign that it could end up getting over 20. And if it's 24, then there could, the Pac-12 might have a chance to get 2 teams in. So they are trying to make that schedule work based on what it's going to do for them for the CFP, and a flex weekend. There's a lot of value there.
I also think there's value in potentially looking over at, the Sun Belt or Conference USA in particular, and going, hey, we're going to our 8 teams against your best 8, and will you work with us to open a week on the schedule? Because that part of the issue with trying to get games is if you're playing 5 non-conference games, where's that 5th week? Because most of these conferences start playing their games. And so you're going to need some help from a partner there who says, okay, we're willing to leave the 2nd week of October open and we'll do some crossover games in that week. But I'm being told not to expect this. Normally the schedule reveal would be happening during the season or latest at the end of the season.
Yep.
I don't expect anything till January, February, March when it comes to a football schedule for 2026.
I do think that they are trying to get a plan for the Pac-12 championship game in December. I've been told that's like the targeted window to have something in front of the athletic directors. And I assume that the options are home field of the highest seed, a fixed neutral site like Las Vegas, or maybe a rotating site across the West at NFL stadiums or neutral sites. But that, I think they're going to get that figured out first, and then the schedule, like you said, will come a few months later.
I think you go to Vegas. I think you play the championship game in Vegas, and I understand Texas State against Utah State might not draw, like the Raiders draw, right? But I think you have to align yourself with a destination and go, we still are one of the best 5 conferences in the country. We're going to act like it and worry about drawing the fans later, because I think that's a big point. Speaking of big games of the week, what are you looking at?
Well, there's a lot of big games, sneaky big games in some respects. Certainly the one on top of mind is BYU at Texas Tech, biggest game in the Big 12. Biggest game Texas Tech has played in since probably Mike Leach was there. And I was trying to think, when was the last time BYU had a game like this? 1984 when they won the national title. I mean, it's a gigantic game, 7 versus 8. Is Texas Tech really that much better than everybody else? Like I think many of us have expected. Can BYU find a way? They seem to find a way every week to get it done. And then there's the implications for the CFP. If you're the Big 12, the best outcome here is Texas Tech winning a close game, I think. And because then BYU's got 1 loss, Texas Tech's got 1 loss. They meet in the championship game. And if it's close, then the loser's got a real good chance to stay in. But I don't think that, the best thing for the Big 12 would definitely not be BYU winning, because that would mean a 2nd loss for Texas Tech.
Yeah, and also there's a Utah halo effect or a ripple effect to Utah, because Utah lost badly to Texas Tech, and so if BYU beats Texas Tech, it doesn't bode well for the Utes getting in, and that's Kyle Whittingham's retirement, right? He's trying to get out. They keep sucking him back in. Look, I think Texas Tech is really good.
Yeah.
I thought they were great. I thought they had a chance to be maybe a semifinalist, or could they play in the championship game? And then they went and laid an egg. And I cannot figure out what happened to them, because I think they lost a game they probably should have won. And it just didn't make sense to me. Who do you think wins that game? Because I would have said Texas Tech 100 times out of 100, but after seeing them against Houston, I have some pause there.
Yeah, they've had some quarterback issues. I think Baron Morton's healthy enough, and they aren't great on offense. They are fantastic on defense.
Yeah.
I believe Texas Tech is favored by 10.5. It's a huge line, given that BYU's undefeated.
Yeah.
I think it'll be close. BYU, they just have a knack for staying in games and making big plays at the end. I think Texas Tech will win, but I would expect it to be very close.
Kalani Sitake, good defensive coach, and get his team ready to play. Other game I'm looking at, Oregon's going to Iowa. You're going to Iowa City. Oregon is, being dissed in this poll. If you believe the Duck fans, they're at 9.
Duck fans need to.
Yeah, they think they should be at 6 or 5. should be hosting a game at Autzen Stadium. That's what Duck fans want. Well, here's your chance to prove it. You're going into a tough place to play. Iowa is going to do what Iowa does. Kirk Ferentz is not going to change who he is. They're going to line up. They're going to stay true to their identity. They played Indiana very tough. This is a chance for Oregon to gain a measure of respect with the committee, and it's just what the Ducks needed coming out of the rankings.
It's also, I was looking, at least as of yesterday, good chance of rain.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that Oregon-Wisconsin game, and the Ducks did not look good in that one. So now they're going to play a much better team on the road. I am of the mindset that Oregon is ranked where they should be by the committee. They haven't beaten a ranked team. They played one ranked team, and they got beat badly at home. If you remove Oregon and you just said that's Team X, well, Team X, it's 0-1 against ranked opponents. 9 is probably a reasonable spot for them. They've got Iowa. They still have Minnesota, I believe, and then they got USC and they got Washington.
Yeah,
very difficult finishing stretch. It'll take care of itself. If they win out, they're in the playoff. If they lose one, probably in, not definite, but probably in. Certainly, if they lose 2, they're out. I think.
I kind of think USC, Oregon, and Washington. I kind of think, Wilner, only one of the 3 is getting in, and just by virtue of them playing each other. And, because if Washington wins out, I think Washington's in the playoff, right? Washington's in the playoff, and that could not do well for Oregon and USC, Oregon. They're going to play each other. I kind of like the Ducks in that game, but I'm looking at the old Pac-12 schools and I'm going, it's a real good chance only one of those is going to get in, but
could be.
There's so much left to play. There's so many games. We'll be all over it right here. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us your comments. Tell us what you thought of the playoff reveal and what you make of the big games of the week. Make sure you read me at johncanzano.com. Read Jon Wilner at wilnerhotline.com. We'll be back next week.
Thanks, everybody.